Now it's time for the cognition tip of the week. One of the things that we talked about a lot last week was perspective taking. It started when we had Angela Persicki, who's a board-certified behavior analyst, and she was talking about some of the different cognition things that we work on and executive function things that we work on, and perspective taking came up, and you guys had a lot of questions for her. We then had Dr. Jonathan Tarbox come in on Friday and talk extensively about perspective taking. So if you missed either of those interviews, those are both available for you probably by the end of today on YouTube and Blip, and I think it's already there on iTunes in their entirety. But I wanted to go back a little bit because one of the things that both Angela Persicki and Dr. Tarbox talked about was that when we teach perspective taking, one of the paths that we take is that first we teach the senses personally, and then later on we teach sensory perspective taking. So I wanted to go back a little bit in the cognition curriculum and talk about how do we teach the senses and some things to keep in mind if you're going to teach your child the senses. And first and foremost, always make it fun. That's gotta be our motto, right? Make it fun, make it fun, make it fun. And make it, because if it's fun, it's reinforcing, right? We all like to have fun. My child always says to me, Mom, let's have some fun, right? That's what he wants to have more than anything else. His idea of fun and my idea of fun, of course, are two entirely different things, but for a lot of things. Some things are the same. But when we're choosing what to work on, and keep in mind that there's lots of different senses, and you can pick which one you want to start with first. Whether you want to start with smell or sight or with hearing or with touch, any of those, or any of the five senses. But make sure that you choose things that are vivid, and then you can fade to things that are more subtle. So let's say, for instance, that we are going to be teaching smells, first of all, because smells is something that we can manipulate in the beginning in a very specific way. Remember, we're always trying to create a bubble. And one of the things that I have here is be mindful of isolating individual lessons. So if I'm going to teach about smell, then I'm going to kind of reduce everything else that's going on. I might make sure that all the windows and doors are closed so that I don't have any other smells. If the garbage truck pulls up, I don't want to be smelling the garbage truck when I'm teaching smells yet. I might do that later on. And I don't want a lot of noises happening, and I don't want a lot of visual stimulation. I'm going to make everything else in the room a little bit more neutral, as much as I can. I'm not going to work overtime on that, right? But one of the things that we did when we taught our son smells, and of course I had therapists helping me with this, but it was fascinating. They just asked me to get some supplies, and what we got were some Dixie cups and some paper towels and some rubber bands. Might be stuff that you have just laying around. It wasn't stuff that I had laying around, so I had to go buy some of that stuff. But we had the Dixie cups, and the little tiny drinking cups, right? Some paper towels. You could use coffee filters if you wanted to, and having rubber bands just makes it a little bit easier. And we were asked to isolate like 6 very pungent smells that my son would be familiar with. Now, you could say to yourself, well, I'm going to take coffee. Coffee grounds are very pungent. They're very vivid, but we're not coffee drinkers in my house. My husband will have like a cup of coffee once every 6 years, and I can't have caffeine at all. So we don't, if my mother comes to visit, we make coffee, but it's a very, it doesn't happen very often. So the smell of coffee, not going to be something that my child can identify. That's going to be something we work on later on to say, oh, this is the smell of coffee. But we want to pick some things that our child will already know the smell of. And that's going to be individual to your child. Now, for my child loves lemons. He's all about lemons. One of his favorite treats, I know it's weird, but is to have a lemon. He likes to eat them in lots of different ways, but he loves a lemon. So we cut up lemon and made it, really so that it was pungent, and squeezed the skin a little bit, the zest, so that it was really pungent lemon, and put that in a Dixie cup. And you want to find at least 4 or 5 or 6 things like that that have a very distinct smell, and a smell that your child would recognize. And then so you put it in the cups, and you cover it with the paper towel, and you put the rubber band on so that you can pass the cups around. You don't have to blindfold anybody. Now, you could do it where you blindfold somebody, but that gets into a whole other sensory issue for the kids, right? Where sometimes then they're all about the blindfold. If it's okay for your child, but we couldn't have done that with ours. So we're passing the cups around, and we played a game with everybody, because you got to make it fun, to see who can identify what the smell is. And because my husband is an actor, everything is over the top, right? Well, you want to have fun with something, you invite my husband because he's a party in pants, right? So we would smell something, he'd go, woo! Do a big reaction, which would just have my son giggling and thinking it was so much fun. And then he wanted to smell it. But so we would all smell and get to guess what we thought it was. And if somebody guessed correctly, they won. And we would do this time and time again to identify what smells are. And then the therapist would be saying, would hand the cup and say, what do you smell? And my son would smell it and he would say lemons. And the therapist would say, yes, it smells like lemons. So we're teaching them that this is your scent, and these are the smell. It's how you smell things. It's the sense of scent is what I'm trying to say ineloquently, but also teaching them the language that surrounds it, and that you have a reaction to smell. Then later on, it was things that you touch, and we would get lots of different things. What's great for that? If you have a child who's not going to say, oh, this is too baby, they have a lot of those baby books that you can go to Goodwill or someplace, Salvation Army, and get a couple of baby books that they have those pages where you have something that's rough and something that's smooth. We had a great dinosaur book where all of the different, there was a little boy who was going through, and he would say, have you seen my dinosaur? And then he'd go on the next page and he would say, this is not my dinosaur. Its spines are too rough. And then you would feel the spines of them. So it gives you great stimuli that they can touch for the senses, and gives them the words. This is smooth. This is rough. This is bumpy. All the different textures of things. This is silky. Great examples of those in very young books for children. But however you do it, these are the criteria that you want to follow. Make it fun, choose things that are vivid, and eventually you can get to things that are a little bit more subtle, and be mindful that you isolate them so that you're not teaching that something is silky the same time that something loud is happening outdoors. We're trying to isolate that sense. And when we do teach our children the senses, it really lays the groundwork so that we can get to perspective taking. It's an amazing thing, you guys. Have fun with it.